A young man walks to a desecrated residential area with an older knight. They stop the site of a bloody battle, where dozens of holy knights lay dead. The knight explains that all of them were killed in the blink of an eye by only 7 people. 10 years later, a figure clad in full suit of armor shambles across the fields. Nearby at the Boar Hat Bar, a man bursts into the bar and states that he saw the infamous Rust Knight. One bar patron points out the wanted posters and explains that the 7 deadly sins had massacred holy knights, including the Grand Master 10 years ago. Loud creaking noises stop conversations in the bar, and Hawk, a talking pig, says he can smell rust. The door swings open and a large armored figure shambles in, causing the patrons to evacuate. The figure falls backward, revealing an unconscious young woman. She explains that she's looking for the sins. Outside, Alione and the knights demand for the Rust Knight to come out, and Hawk comes over dressed up with pieces of armor. Alione shouts at the owner, while the woman tries to sneak out of the bar. One of the knights notices her, and Alione calls for them to inform Twigo. The knights chase her through the forest. However, Hawk bolts in and knocks out all of them. The owner asks why she's looking for the sins, as she replies that she's trying to stop the Holy Knights. Hawk questions this, saying that the Holy Knights are heroes who protect Leones. However, the woman reveals that King Bartra is not actually sick, and that the Holy Knights have commenced a coup d'etat to start a war. Though she knows they're considered criminals, the sins are her only hope in stopping the Holy Knights. Suddenly, Twigo cuts the ground below them, causing him to fall down the cliff. Twiglo recognizes the woman's earring as a mark of the royal family, concluding that she is Elizabeth, the 3rd princess of Leones. Elizabeth, Hawk, and the owner flee into the forest, hoping to accidentally kill her. Twigo cuts to the entire forest, causing hundreds of trees to fall. The owner shields her from the impact with his body. However, Elizabeth then walks toward Twigo to give herself up in the hopes that a kind stranger would not be killed because of her. Twigo attacks Meliodas from behind, but instead, Twigo is the one who gets hurt. As Meliodas stands, Twigo recognizes him. Meliodas counterattacks with his broken blade and causes the area to explode in a cloud of smoke, and Twigo shoots off into the distance. He smirks, reintroducing himself as Meliodas, the dragon sin of wrath who leaded the 7 deadly sins. After resheathing his sword, Meliodas explains to Elizabeth that he runs the bar to gather intel. He asks if she'll come with them, which she immediately agrees to. Twigo, surrounded by knights in a crater, tells them to call for reinforcements, but Hawk's mom emerges to pick up Meliodas and Elizabeth. At Fort Solviels, a holy man expresses his hopes that Twigo's report on seeing one of the 7 deadly sins is real this time. Meliodas makes Elizabeth the bar's waitress so she can gather information on the holy knights and the other 7 deadly sins. They set up the tavern outside of Bernia village. The trio find out that a holy knight has cursed the village to stop their water supply. Gilthunder had stuck a sword in the ground, which can only be removed by another holy knight. A child named Mead comes up and says that his friends, the 7 deadly sins, could easily fix it. However, the villagers grow angry. Once they start throwing rocks, Meliodas brings Mead back to the Boar Hat. Meliodas asks Mead what he meant when he said he knew the sins, but Mead doesn't answer. Mead runs off after hearing commotion from the village. He tries to pull the sword out of the ground, while the guards and villagers shout at him. The village elder reminds the villagers that the Holy Knights were the one who insulted their village, not Mead. They finally realize their mistake and try to help Mead with the sword, but are unsuccessful. Meliodas saunters into the village and nonchalantly pulls the sword out, causing the water to flow again. He throws the sword at the 2 guards who run away. The villagers apologize to Mead and everyone celebrates at the Boar Hat. While struggling with her waitress duties, Elizabeth learns about the Forest of White Dreams, a place so dangerous that not even holy knights want to enter. Back at Fort Solvales, soldiers report to Gilthunder that Meliodas had pulled the sword out of the ground. After hearing the news, Gilthunder throws a spear toward Bernia village. Sensing the attack, Meliodas steps outside. He catches the spear and redirects it right back to the fort, aiming perfectly for Gilthunder's head. Gilthunder, who moves out of the way, figures out that Meliodas is still alive because of that attack. Meliodas knows that Gilthunder will be chasing them, so he says they must leave Bernia as soon as possible. Elizabeth suggests hiding in the Forest of White Dreams, and Meliodas says there must be another sin to find there. After walking for over 3 hours and having lost their sense of direction, they suddenly discover multiple copies of Hawk. All of the copies attempt to proclaim that they are the real one, until Meliodas easily defeats them. The monsters retreat and the characters decide to follow them, and finally discover Diane of the 7 deadly sins. The Priester Imps appears to be Diane's underlings, and worried that Meliodas can be a holy knight, they decide to wake up Diane, who was sleeping. She grabbed hold of Meliodas with her left hand, only to realize that Meliodas was her captain. Hawk and Elizabeth then realized that she was the sin of envy, Diane. As soon as Deanne discovered that Meliodas was traveling with Elizabeth, she got jealous and threw him away, calling him a cheer. The impact of her thrust destroyed areas of the surrounding forest. She continues crying and rampaging until finally, she calmed down and listened to the reason why they were traveling. When Meliodas revealed that he had no memory of what had happened 10 years ago, Deanne explained that 10 years ago, during the National Foundation Festival, the 7 deadly sins were summoned by the great holy knight Zarathustra. However, when they arrived at the meeting point that only could discover his dead body, which was completely skewered with spears, the 7 deadly sins were then surrounded by all the knights of the kingdom and were then branded as traitors of Leonis. After the recollection, Deanne decided to help search for the 7 deadly sins. Immediately afterwards, the group encounters Gilthunder of the Holy Knights, who paralyzed them with his electrical abilities. After realizing that Gilthunder was a holy knight, Elizabeth revealed he was like her elder brother and was released from the electrical rings. When she demanded him to release the spell, Gilthunder ignorantly kicked Hawk away and began to question Meliodas about whether he knows why the holy knights are after the heads of the 7 deadly sins. He continues to answer his own question and states that he wishes to take revenge for his father Zarathustra as well as surpassing him. Afterwards, Meliodas recognizes Gilthunder as Little Gil, the son of the great holy knight. Meliodas breaks the electrical spell and draws his sword. He was able to deflect Gilthunder's initial lightning slash, was cut by his second from behind, and subsequently fell onto the ground. Gilthunder thought that he was dying and decided to ask for his last words. Meliodas took the opportunity to ask for the locations of the 7 deadly sins and discovered the location of the fox's sin of greed, Ban, and the grizzly's sin of Sloth King. Meliodas jumped back up and returned to enter the battle again. He easily and swiftly dodged Gilthunder's attacks, attempting to quickly escape the battle and search for the 7 deadly sins. When Gilthunder was about to deliver his finishing blow, Deanne grabbed him with her hands and threw him away after her armband was burnt by Gilthunder's discharge of lightning. The holy knight flew into a chapel and injured priests and civilians who were praying to bring divine retribution to the holy knights. He remained unscathed and ignored the people who was wounded around him. Meliodas and his group decided to go to the base dungeon because it was closer, the weird fangs were stationed there. Elizabeth grew concerned over Meliodas' woo from Gilthunder. He entered the boar hat and was then discovered by Elizabeth to have fainted on the floor. At the base dungeon, the weird fangs are revealed to be located there in order to keep Ban confined. Ban began humming a tune even with metal rods pierced into his body. Goldjuice appears and attempts to take Elizabeth and Meliodas' sword back to Leonis. Whilst attempting to take the sword, he is humiliated by Meliodas and makes a hasty retreat. Meliodas and Elizabeth set off to base dungeon afterwards. However, they are stopped by a confused Deanne, who after hearing the sound of a bell, attacks the group. They try to run away from the berserk Deanne, involving a pair of shepherds along the way. However, Meliodas soon succumbs to the same bell and begins to fight Deanne. Meanwhile, in base dungeon, Ban is shown wandering around after having dealt with Jericho. It is not long before he is found by Jude of the Weird Fangs, who promptly stabs Ban in the chest. Meliodas and Deanne are still fighting each other. Elizabeth shouts for them to snap out of it, and for a few moments they do, until the sound of the bell once again spurs them to fight each other again. The Holy Knight Frieza comes in, threatening the life of the shepherds. However, Elizabeth steps in to protect one of them, heavily injuring herself in the process. It is then revealed that one of the shepherds is actually Ruin, and that he has been fooling them all this time. As Elizabeth gets beaten up by Ruin, she manages to knock off the bell that is causing the hallucinations. Ruin goes to punish Elizabeth further for doing so, but Meliodas quickly comes to her aid, thus beginning Meliodas' battle with Ruin, whilst Deanne faces off against Frieza. Both defeat their respective opponents and the team continues their trek to base dungeon. Elsewhere, despite having been pierced in the chest, Ban is able to overpower Jude and takes him out. Meliodas and Co finally enter base dungeon, although it is all a trap as Goldjuice locks them in with the Eternal Seal spell. However, the reunion between Ban and Meliodas caused so much destruction that it completely destroyed the structure and nullified the spell. Later that evening, the gang enjoys a meal courtesy of Downa, but an omen in the sky foretells of great disaster to befall Britannia soon. In Leonis, it is revealed that King is alive and well, but he is working with Gilthunder. Ban wakes up from a dream as Hawk calls everyone down. Elizabeth wakes up next to a rope-bound Meliodas. Meliodas chooses the gang's next destination to be the capital of the dead, where King is rumored to have gone. As they talk more and more about what the capital of the dead might hold, Ban falls asleep and has flashbacks of when he tried to obtain immortality from the Fountain of Youth. His attempts are all stopped by a mysterious girl named Elaine, who blows him away from the fountain each time. It is then discovered that the forest will die if the water is taken, after which Ban stops all of his attempts. The gang stops at a village said to be the closest to the capital of the dead and split up to gather more information on both King and the capital of the dead. Ben discovers a pair of siblings, Ellen and Luigi, and offers them some food in return for information on the capital. Their meeting is interrupted by the appearance of King, who stabs Ben in the chest. A fight ensues, however, it is broken up when King sees Diane, which causes him to run away. After being fed, Ellen opens up and says that a priceless memory shared with the deceased will open the path to the capital. Having obtained a hint to getting into the capital of the dead, the others try to find memories with which to unlock the way, albeit with no success. It is only as Ben remembers back to a time of the lane that the gang is granted access to the capital of the dead. King secretly follows along behind them as the siblings watch in awe as they all disappear. Upon entry, Ben spots what appears to be Elaine in the distance, who tries to run away, however he gives pursuit with King following in tow. Back at the village, a mysterious female holy knight appears behind the siblings, noting that the capital of the dead does indeed exist. The mysterious holy knight is revealed to be Gila, who threatens the kids and succeeds in gaining entry to the capital of the dead. Meanwhile, inside, King petrifies Ben in an act of revenge for his sister, Elaine. However, the spirit of Elaine chooses to reverse the petrification, much to the surprise of King. Here, Ben and Elaine's pasts are explored. Whilst looking for Ben and King, the two now split from the rest of the group to chase after Elaine, Meliodas, and the others have a run-in with Gila. The battle begins between Meliodas and Diane fighting against Gila. However, tremors from the battle with Gila reach where Ben and King are, forcing Ben to join the fight against Gila. Left alone with his sister now, King listens to her plea to help Ben just as Hawk arrives with Elizabeth, who tries to pull the spear out from the ground to fight Gila. Seeing her determination, King decides to go help the Sins, who are still struggling in defeating Gila. With the appearance of King, the battle comes to a close as he overpowers Gila of the Chastieful. Their time in the capital of the dead seemingly up, Ben and Elaine have one more close moment before being bid farewell by Ellen and Luigi, who are revealed to have been ghosts this entire time. As the group rests, Elizabeth praises King's power as he was able to defeat Gila single-handedly, whereas Meliodas, Ben, and Diane struggled, despite being a 3 versus 1 battle. King responds that if either of them had their sacred treasures, they would have been able to defeat Gila in a breeze, which starts their search for the others' sacred treasures. Under the guise of summons for Hendrickson, Jericho, and Twigo are taken underground and offered power through drinking demon's blood. However, if they're not compatible with the demon blood, they will die. The two accept this despite its risks and drink the demon's blood. Jericho is found compatible and Twigo not. Meanwhile, Meliodas and the others arrive at Vasil for its annual fighting festival, whose grand prize this year is Gideon, Diane's sacred treasure. As giants are banned from the festival due to an incident years ago, Diane stays back with Elizabeth for some girl time while Meliodas, Ben, and Cain enter the competition to win back Diane's sacred treasure. Elizabeth and Diane are out in the forest outside of Vasil searching for anything that might be edible. Elizabeth stumbles upon a pile of mushrooms before a shadow looms over her. Diane hears Elizabeth's cry and comes running over to find a frightened Elizabeth and a large purple mushroom creature. She taps it on the head and it squirts out pink smoke that engulfs them. Back in Vasil, the elimination round begins with the rules being that contestants have to push their opponents out of the ring. The 8 contestants left standing will move on to the finals. Hauser learns from Griamore and Veronica that Cain, Ben, and Meliodas are part of the 7 deadly sins. Meliodas and Ben fight each other. They go head-to-head and it looks like Meliodas is going to win, but Ben takes all his powers. Ben goes to deliver the finishing blow, but Meliodas grabs and crushes his wrist and blasts him out of the ring. King and Diane saw how it happened but are concerned with the look of Meliodas' face when he did it. Next up is Diane against Hauser in the first match of the semi-finals. Diane runs into the ring but first hands over tiny Elizabeth to Meliodas. Veronica and Griamore continue their search for Elizabeth. Diane tries to avoid Hauser's tornado attack because she does not want to destroy Elizabeth's clothes. Hauser sends a full-on cyclone at Diane, but Diane beats it by turning into heavy metal. Meliodas goes up against Cain in the next semi-final. Cain reveals that he knew Meliodas in the past and is from Danafor, a kingdom that Meliodas allegedly destroyed. It is where Elizabeth was born. Cain asks him what possessed him to kill Liz, the woman he loved. Meliodas says that he tried to protect them, and that this time he is not going to let that happen again. Cain asks him if he can trust Meliodas, and Meliodas says that he did not betray the kingdom. Cain forfeits the round, leaving Meliodas as the winner of the round. The final round is Meliodas against Diane. Meliodas asks if they should half-ass it since if either one wins, they will still get the treasure. But then some women from the sidelines catcall Meliodas, upsetting Diane, who calls Meliodas a womanizer. Meanwhile, Eula, Jericho, and Mormus are on their way to Vasil, where Jericho wants to use her new power. Diane relentlessly punches Meliodas but tries to convince her that he does not know who those women are. They continue to fight but suddenly freeze. Meliodas tells the crowd that Vasil is theirs and that they have 1 minute to clear out. The crowd does not believe them at first, but then disperses once Eula, Jericho, and Mormus arrived. Jericho attacks Ban, severely injuring him. Ban is surprised that his cuts are not healing. Meliodas goes up against Eula, but is taken out by her chain reaction technique. King finds Ban and Meliodas unconscious and is attacked by Eula. He survives the attack and defeats both women. King tells Hawk to take care of Ban and Meliodas while he interrogates Eula and Jericho. Diane is upset when she learns that Gideon is missing. Hauser comes to fight her for past crimes, but first she looks after an old man. Diane is then attacked by Mormus and set falling into a ravine. Hawk gets Elizabeth, Ban, and Meliodas to safety. While praying over the two unconscious deadly sins, Elizabeth returns to normal size just as Veronica and Griamore walk by. Veronica gives Elizabeth her jacket to wear and proceeds to scold her for running away with the deadly sins. Veronica tries to take Elizabeth away, but Meliodas stops them. Veronica pulls out Goddess Ember and activates it, causing Meliodas to be sucked inside. Elizabeth snatches the jewel and Meliodas' sword and tells Veronica to bring him back, but she does not know how to do that. Griamore captures Elizabeth in his shell, but Ban tells him he will kill Veronica if he does not let Elizabeth go. King continues to fight Eula and Jericho, but Lovehelm saves them, revealing himself to be Helbram. Helbram and King fight against each other, although it looks like Helbram has the upper hand. Ban gets taken out by Jericho and Veronica is released from his clutches. Eula and Jericho tell Griamore to release Elizabeth into their care. Veronica says no, and while they are distracted, Elizabeth gets up and runs away. Veronica runs after her and shields her from an explosion made by Eula. This causes some fatal injuries and she dies in Elizabeth's arms. Eula and Jericho are released from Griamore's shield and come to retrieve Elizabeth once more. Elizabeth is crying over Veronica's body for Meliodas, but Eula says he cannot hear her. Suddenly, the goddess Amber shatters, letting Meliodas out, accompanied by a burst of dark energy. Meliodas attacks Eula and cuts off her hand to retrieve his sword. He sends another wave of magic towards her that knocks Eula out. Jericho saves her by performing a super recovery spell. Eula wakes up with her hand reattached and says that Meliodas is giving off disturbing magical energy. Ban asks Meliodas if it's really him, but gets cut in half by Meliodas. He appears before Elizabeth and sniffs her before flying away. He goes to Helbram and proceeds to fight him. Helbram is just toying with Meliodas, trying to see the depth of Meliodas' new power. He uses his hunter whisk to take him out and begins to jot down notes of what he's seen. Hauser stares into the chasm, upset that Marmus had cast her in there. Suddenly, a huge pig comes walking up with a house on its back and deposits Diane's clothes into the opening. Helbram and Meliodas continue to fight, and it looks like Meliodas has the upper hand. However, Hendrickson lends Helbram some of his power and Helbram is able to defeat Meliodas. Ban grabs King and Elizabeth and runs away to get them to safety, with Hawk following. Diana shows up and saves Meliodas from Helbram before he can take Meliodas away. Diane asks Helbram if it was him who hurt Meliodas, and when he doesn't answer, she uses her Mother Earth catastrophe technique to disrupt the ground. Helbram manages to get away with Eula and Jericho. That is until Diane's attack rips holes into their flying mana rays. The link between Helbram and Hendrickson is severed, leaving them to wonder if he died. Diane returns to the group and shows them Meliodas. Ban punches him as payback and Elizabeth hugs him, asking him to not do that again. Griamore, who is still holding Veronica, uses his shield to burst through the rubble. Elizabeth asks him to bury her near the lake that they used to play at and vows to stop the Holy Knights. Meliodas realizes that his sword has been stolen. Nearby, Helbram has managed to get Eula and Jericho to safety. He is happy because he stole Meliodas' sword, which is one of the keys to reviving the demon clan. Hauser learns that Veronica and Griamore are dead, although he can't believe it. He's also told that the delicate balance between the Hendrickson and Dreyfus factions is starting to crumble. An armored giant roams the forest with Alan. They take shelter in a cave when it starts to rain. A mate brings news to Eula, Jericho, Helbram about sightings of the armored giant in the Orden forest. Helbram sends Don Roar to destroy the armored giant. Meanwhile, the gang arrives and sets up shop. Meliodas sends Elizabeth to the village to get some herbs while he and the guys do some hunting. Holy Makes arrive while Elizabeth and Hawk are in the village. They quickly hide behind a wall of rocks, but are found by Alan. Ban and Meliodas hear a loud growl echo throughout the forest. Alan tells Hawk and Elizabeth that he's looking for glue to fix armor since the armor giant has a gaping hole in his chest. They ask him if he's a friend of his, but Alan doesn't know how to answer. Meliodas, Ban, and Keen find a field of the fallen vanguard. One of them tells Meliodas that Don Roar is going after the armored giant. Meliodas theorizes that the armored giant is Gauther. They make it to the armored giant before Don Roar manages to kill him. Just as they're about to fight, Alan arrives apologizing to the armored giant about not finding any glue. Then all hell breaks loose as the two groups go against each other. One fires a deadly arrow at the armored giant, but Alan catches it and reveals himself to be Gauther, the goat sin of lust. While Don Roar would like to challenge the four deadly sins, they come only for the armored giant and were asked to return with its head. Gauther cuts off the armored giant's head and hands it over to Don Roar to prevent any more fighting. Don Roar accepts the head and leaves. This leaves the four deadly sins alone to face the armored giant, who is surprisingly still alive. We learn that the armored giant was once human. To top it off, a holy knight. Gauther tells Meliodas and the gang that he had the armored giant wear his armor to seal away the holy knight's magic. However, once the armor started to break, the seal was broken. The armored giant attacks them and they try to hold him off. Meliodas goes to deliver the killing blow, but the trapped holy knight pleads with him not to. Ban gets upset that Meliodas will kill him and asks Gauther to, but he says he is incapable of killing him as well. Bane goes to do it, but Meliodas stops him, telling him that there is still a part of the armored giant that's human. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Dion wait for Meliodas and the deadly sins return. Kane arrives asking if the boar hat is open and is welcomed inside by Elizabeth, who he mistakes for Liz. Kane tells Elizabeth about Liz. He also tells Elizabeth why Meliodas will carry a sword around. Kane pulls out a sword and sets it on the bar. He says that it was a gift from Liz to Meliodas, but that he accepted it on Meliodas' behalf. Ban uses his wit and pulls out the armored giant's heart. Meliodas is angry with Ban for killing the armored giant. Gauther points out that the holy knight is stuck in the illusion he created for him. We learn that he's actually Dale, Yila's and her brother Zeal's long-lost father. Elizabeth takes the sword and runs off in search of Meliodas. Despite what Ban did, the armored giant is still alive and is transformed into a demon. Meliodas still doesn't want to fight him, but Ban and King do. Elizabeth arrives with a sword and throws it to Meliodas. He catches it and uses it to destroy the demon. The group leaves to head back to the boar hat. Elizabeth asks Gauther to join them on their quest and he accepts. Meliodas asks Gauther if he knows who assaulted him when they fled from Leona's back when they were framed for wanting to overthrow it. Gauther says that it was Merlin, the boar sin of blood meat, and he doesn't know why. Dreyfus asks Hauser if anything out of the ordinary happened during his absence. Hauser tells him that there have been reports of more holy knights joining the new generation. Helbram and Hendrickson open up a gateway on the seal to the demon clan. However, it was not big enough for them to pass through it because they are missing a fragment to undo the seal. Meliodas tells the group that he is going to break into the castle and get his sword back. He tells that the sword is actually a fragment of a ritual relic that was used to seal away the demon clan. Hendrickson reveals that he wants to bring on a holy war. Dreyfus is upset, but Hendrickson reminds him of how he helped kill his brother so that Dreyfus could become a great holy knight. Hendrickson asks that Dreyfus returns the favor or else he will kill him himself. A mage appears in the boar hat and kidnaps Elizabeth because she is the missing piece to breaking the seal to releasing the demon clan. Meliodas rushes out of the boar hat to go after her. Ban and Gauther decide to go with him. Meliodas has Diane throw them to their destination. They land outside of the north gate and fight their way through to the castle. But before they reach the gate, they feel a large magical presence coming from the south. At the south gate, an army appears and its leader is Arthur, new king of Camelot. Hendrickson says that he will take care of him and that Dreyfus can deal with the 7 deadly sins. King Arthur is here to meet with the king, but Hendrickson tells him that he's fallen ill. King Arthur tells them that his companion has the ability to cure the king. Hendrickson still tries to get them to leave, but King Arthur refuses to do so. Elizabeth is transported to a locked chamber with Hawk. Hawk freaks out because he needs to go to the bathroom and knocks down the door. The two of them escape. Gauther uses his powers to hypnotize the charging crowd into fans instead of foes. They fall on over the 7 deadly sins and the trio manage to get into the capital. Hendrickson attacks King Arthur, but Arthur is skilled in fighting as well. Kane summons Oslo, and he uses him to transport them to Leonis. Dreyfus goes to Hendrickson's magical research center. Suddenly, they hear a boom from down below and drop through the floor to find Diane. Jericho attempts to kill her, but fails because she used her secret treasure to deflect it. Gilthunder uses his Thunderbolt execution to harm Diane, along with Helbram and Hauser joining in. Diane manages to survive their attacks by performing ground gladius. Dreyfus and Diane go toe-to-toe, but Dreyfus delivers a killing blow to her chest, causing her fall to the ground. Dreyfus asks Helbram if it is true that Elizabeth is in the capital, and Diane confirms that it is as she tries to stand. This time, Dreyfus sends Diane flying into the capital and Gila rushes after her because she is worried about Zeal. The people of Leonis begin to throw rocks at Diane because Dreyfus has called her their enemy. Diane almost gives up but remembers her promise to Elizabeth and decides to keep it. The city begins to be destroyed, but is not Diane who's doing it. Is actually Helbram. This upsets Gila, who questions whether or not the 7 deadly sins really did betray the kingdom 10 years ago. Zeal suddenly runs out into the open and sees Gila, but before he can run to her, a building collapses above him. Diane gets hit as she protects Zeal from getting hurt. Dreyfus arrives and Jericho asks if she can give the killing blow. However, Yula and Hauser stop them as they switch sides to protect Diane. The fight continues with Hauser and Gila combining their powers to protect Diane and Gila's little brother from the combined forces of Githunter, Helbram, Dreyfus, and Jericho. Hauser and Gila manage to knock out Jericho and scratch Helbram using their fire tornado attack, but Gilthunder and Dreyfus were left unharmed. Hauser and Gila were overpowered and Diane was going to be attacked by Dreyfus when Gauther stepped in. Gauther managed to ensnare Dreyfus in his mind, but Dreyfus was able to break out but ended up severely wounded. With Gauther stabbed through the chest and left for dead, Dreyfus retreats with Gilthunder and orders Helbram to finish off the traitors and Diane. Back in the castle's dungeon, Elizabeth and Hawke try to escape from the castle's dungeon. They come across Elizabeth's older sister Margaret and learn from Vivian that Margaret had chosen self-imprisonment because she was unwilling to abandon Gilthunder. Elizabeth did not believe that, and as Vivian was about to get her, Hawke hid her and protected Elizabeth. As Vivian teleported Hawke away and knocked out Elizabeth, Vivian opened Margaret's cell, saying she would grant Elizabeth's wish and free Margaret as long as she has the courage to escape. King Arad is on the scene, and upon learning that Helbram has hurt Diane, he became enraged. The fight between King and Helbram, who was later to be revealed to be a fairy and close acquaintance with King, was brutal. Helbram wrapped King up in tree roots, forcing King to watch as he made mincemeat out of Diane. Much to his surprise, King summoned a powerful shield to protect Diane. Helbram questioned King as to why he would go so far for a half-dead girl, to which the latter replied that it was because Diane was precious to him that he could do so. King asks Stin if he wants to destroy all humans, and Helbram says that he can't stop himself anymore. They fight using their magic and King wins. Helbram falls to the ground and King approaches him with Helbram's helmet. Helbram dies, meanwhile Hendrickson and Arthur battle it out. Hendrickson is suspicious of Arthur because he realizes that he might know about the imprisonment of the king, the kidnapping of the princess, or the plan to resurrect the demons. Hendrickson uses Hellblaze Wave to finish off Arthur, but it is repelled by Meliodas. They begin to fight each other. Gilthunder is followed by the mage, who tells him that Dreyfus is weak and that Hendrickson is the future. The mage is contacted by Hendrickson, and she sees to his eyes that he's facing Meliodas. She sends Gilthunder to help him. The battle ends up being Gilthunder and Hendrickson versus Meliodas and Arthur. Gilthunder goes up against Meliodas and appears to have the upper hand, but Meliodas uses his demonic power to stop him. Hendrickson and Arthur continue their fight, but Hendrickson manages to burn Arthur. The flame won't go out until Merlin appears to help him. Elsewhere, the group wonders where Ben is. He's gone and found a secret tunnel that leads downward. Elizabeth wakes up and is in the same chamber as her father. She hugs her father, and the mage warns her to enjoy the reunion while she can, because soon Gilthunder is going to beat Meliodas. Meliodas and Gilthunder continue to fight. Hendrickson joins in having defeated Arthur. Hendrickson calls for the mage to come join them. Meliodas is outnumbered 3-1. Margaret climbs a tower to get better view of the battle. In her mind, she begs Gilthunder to stop fighting Meliodas. Meliodas spots Margaret as she jumps from the ledge but sends an attack to her, which reveals a monster that he destroys. This leaves him open to attack, and he's struck by Hendrickson, Gilthunder, and the mage's magic. Gilthunder turns against Hendrickson and cuts off his arm, now free of the curse. Margaret floats down into Arthur's arms. Gilthunder asks Meliodas to let him handle the rest since he can finally take revenge for the murder of his father. Gilthunder attacks Hendrickson and appears to finally destroy him. Margaret wakes up in Gilthunder's arms. Meliodas thanks Arthur for his help. The mage is upset and tells them that it can't end this way. Merlin finally steps in and reveals that the mage is Vivian, her apprentice. Vivian is shocked when she realizes that Merlin is one of the 7 deadly sins. Ban finally finds the Horn of Cernunnos. He asked it to bring back Elaine and to take him instead. He doesn't get a response, but Hawke appears and asks him where Elizabeth is. Hawke explains to Ban how he came to be down there with the horn. He tries to get Ban to leave, but he says that he has more to do. Suddenly, Nahorn begins to glow and agrees with him. It tells him that it will take some time for them to return to their full power, having lost it during the Age of War. Ban asks if it's true that they grant wishes to anyone. The goddesses tell him that they'll bring Elaine back, but not in exchange for his life. Instead, they'll give him a mission. Hawk thinks the whole thing is pretty sketchy, but Ben agrees and tells the goddesses that he'll do whatever they want. The goddesses want him to kill Meliodas. Merlin asks Vivian where Elizabeth is, and she tells them that she's in the king's room. Merlin teleports them to outside the room. She breaks the seal using absolute cancel, and Meliodas is reunited with Elizabeth. Dreyfus arrives and says that all this was to start a holy war. Elizabeth reveals that Griamore is alive. The king then removes his title of Grand Master and tells Dreyfus that he'll await sentencing in the dungeon. The king then collapses from strain, and Merlin says that she can tree him, but that she needs to take him to Camelot. Elizabeth agrees to this after seeing Merlin's boar tattoo. Arthur, Merlin, and the king disappear just as the castle blows up around those remaining in the room. Everyone is alright, although Dreyfus is missing. Hendrickson and Vivian arrive at the castle. Hendrickson has awakened the demon blood in the Holy Knights. The 7 deadly sins are talking about finding the others when Jericho and Gila collapse. Jericho transforms into a large monster. Jericho isn't the only one to transform into a monster. Lots of other Holy Knights have transformed as well. Hendrickson arrives having also taken the demon blood, but because he was compatible with it, he has it turn into a monster, although he looks bigger than before. King attacks him, but is deflected by Helbram, who Hendrickson has brought back to life. Helbram attacks King and Hendrickson attacks Hauser. Ilthunder and Meliodas team up to attack Hendrickson, but Vivian takes Margaret and Elizabeth captive. Distracted, Hendrickson cuts Gilthunder and stabs Meliodas. Elizabeth tells Hendrickson not to kill them, and in return, she'll go with him willingly. Before she leaves, she tells Meliodas to promise to continue fighting the 7 deadly sins. Hendrickson takes Elizabeth away. Meliodas tries to follow, but is blocked by Ban and Hawk. Ban attacks Meliodas, but Meliodas survives despite losing his arm. Meliodas reattaches his arm and his demon powers surface. Ban asks Meliodas if he's from the demon race. Meliodas doesn't respond to Ban's question, so the two of them face off. Hawk tells Meliodas about the deal Ban made with the goddesses. This catches Meliodas off guard, and Ban is able to hit him. Ban reveals that the goddesses told him everything and how Meliodas was buddies with the guys that killed Elaine. Meliodas returns to normal and tells Ban to kill him. Meanwhile, Deanne is still trying to hold back Jericho. Hauser is being pursued by other monsters, and Keem and Helbram are fighting up above. Gauther is also trying to keep Gila from transforming. Hendrickson and Elizabeth run into Dreyfus. Dreyfus tells him that he's going to atone for the wrongs that he's done by stopping Hendrickson. Ban goes to kill Meliodas, but Meliodas attacks Ban. He tells Ban that he can't abandon Elizabeth, and that he's not just going to let him kill him. Hawk tries to talk some sense into Ban, but Ban says he needs to take this chance to see Elaine again. Hawk tells him that if they're lying, then he's going to lose his best friend. Meliodas agrees that they can fight after this is all over, but for now, they have to do their duty as the 7 deadly sins. Ban agrees to this, and Meliodas asks Hawk to take him to where Elizabeth is. Ban goes to help Gilthunder and Deanne by throwing Hyper Recovery Marble at them. King continues to fight Helbram as he tries to convince him to stop. Helbram tells Kane to just kill him, and that if it's him, he'll be fine. Hendrickson and Dreyfus continue to fight each other. It's a bit difficult for Dreyfus as Hendrickson has a regeneration power now. Both fire magic at each other, but it collides and explodes. Hawk is racing towards them with Meliodas on her back. The rubble clears, but instead of seeing Hendrickson, Dreyfus sees that Elizabeth has been hurt. He rushes to her side, but Hendrickson appears and they continue to sword fight. Hendrickson breaks Dreyfus's sword and proclaims that the fight is over. Jericho begs Deanne to kill her. Helbram begs King to kill him. King summons a sunflower, and the beam it shoots out destroys Helbram completely. Ban says that he'll kill Jericho, but instead saves her by destroying the demon she'd inhabited. Ban and King stay behind and rid the city of other demon monsters. The Dawn Roar arrives and decides to help. Hendrickson melts Dreyfus and he blows away just as Hawk and Meliodas arrive. Meliodas grabs Elizabeth and puts her on top of Hawk and sends them both away. Meliodas and Hendrickson proceed to fight each other. Deanne and the gang arrive just in time to help along with the Holy Knights. Meliodas, King, and Deanne all attack Hendrickson, but he continues to stand up and fight. Hendrickson knocks Ban into a wall adjacent to them. Ban pulls himself out and asks Hendrickson where he got that and makes it so that the wall comes tumbling down. Inside is a demon, and Hendrickson says that that creature is the source of it all. Hendrickson stands before the demon's corpse. A 7 deadly sins can't believe it. Gauther tells them that he senses the same magic coming from the corpse as he felt coming from the new generation. Hendrickson attacks the sins by using the power of the red demon. Bang gets impaled by purple tendrils and rushes towards Hendrickson. He tells Hendrickson that he killed the red demon years ago as he smashes him into the ground. Ban then uses his nunchucks and destroys the demon corpse. The Sins decide to go down the hole Bayan created and leave Diane above to act as a lookout. They follow a trail of blood that leads to Hendrickson. Behind him are the remains of the Grey Demon. He takes a sample of blood from the corpse and injects it into himself. It transforms him into a dark grey demon with horns and wings. Above, Holy Knights begin to question if Hendrickson was behind the attack on the city and if they were behind framing the Sins. Gilthunder says that it doesn't matter because it was the Sins that saved them. Suddenly, there's a blast that sends Diane flying as Hendrickson and the Sins emerge from below. Hendrickson begins to attack the Holy Knights who try to fight back but are killed easily. Don Roar jumps in to help along with Gilthunder, Yila, and Hauser, but their attacks don't have any impact on Hendrickson. Elizabeth wakes up and makes everyone to run because Hendrickson is too strong. They continue to fight, but Hendrickson slaughters them. Meliodas is left standing, but he is guarding Elizabeth. He collapses and Hendrickson sends an attack called Den End that will kill anything it instantly touches. He hurls it towards Meliodas, but Hawk steps in the way. He sacrifices himself so that Meliodas can save Elizabeth. Elizabeth throws herself on top of Hawk and begins to wail. Suddenly, a bright light emerges and begins to heal everyone. It's coming from Elizabeth as she's awakened the druid priestess blood in her veins and is an apostle, the goddesses. Outside of the city, a healed Veronica watches the fight. Elizabeth asks him why he's doing this and Hendrickson says it's revenge for them locking away the demon race. Hendrickson does a dark nebula attack, but Elizabeth says that she won't let him hurt anyone else and produces her own ball of light. It eradicates Hendrickson's attack and heals everyone in the vicinity. Hendrickson is hurt but not enough to stop him. Don Roar and the Holy Knights prepare themselves to attack again. Hendrickson somehow makes Gilthunder freeze and goes to attack him, but is blocked by Meliodas who punches Hendrickson. This knocks him to the ground. Meliodas tells Gilthunder to beam instructions into the other people's minds. Meliodas fights Hendrickson one-on-one while the others attack him from the sidelines. Meliodas gets hit by the attacks too, and it looks like he's willing to sacrifice himself as long as it destroys Hendrickson. But then Meliodas attacks using Revenge Counter, which has become supercharged, since he absorbed all of the attack's powers. Unfortunately, by using this attack he might self-destruct since he is unable to control so much power. Hendrickson tries to fly away, but Griamore encloses him in a sphere. Hendrickson breaks free, but Meliodas delivers the attack. Hendrickson is blown to smithereens. Meliodas falls to the ground severely injured but alive. Elizabeth rushes to his side. The Holy Knights fall to their knees and beg the king to punish them for disregarding his plea to avoid a holy war. The king sentences them to continue to being Holy Knights in order to restore the kingdom and protect the people. The king also commends his daughter for finding the 7 deadly sins and for her strength. Elizabeth begins to cry because she wasn't strong enough to save Hawk. Hawk's corpse disintegrates and reveals a tiny Hawk that is very much alive. Everyone celebrates. Merlin tells Meliodas that she can't find the coffin of eternal darkness. She tells him that a strange bird-like creature was spotted flying over the city shortly after he defeated Hendrickson. It was flying south. Merlin tells him that she's going to stick around and help find the coffin. The kingdom of Leonis is gradually being rebuilt. While sharing a meal with the king and her sisters, Elizabeth learns that Meliodas and the Sins are leaving that same day. The king forbids her from seeing Meliodas so she can't say goodbye. Incidentally, Meliodas shows up and tells Elizabeth that they still have one more sin to find. He invites her to come with them and she says yes. Elizabeth is reunited with the Sins. Bayan tells Meliodas that he's leaving the group to see the world but that he'll come back. Meliodas tells Merlin that he has a bunch of questions about that night 10 years ago. She says it's a long story and Meliodas replies that he can't wait to hear it. The end. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more.